I think, like you said, the accountability, the word, the concepts itself it's rough and it's hard. And so there's a couple of concepts that I think are really important to note is that accountability is really just a way to measure your discipline and discipline, basically doing the things you don't want to do to get the things that you do want. By nature, I think that we're designed to conserve energy, but to be accountable, sometimes it's easier to do those things that are not as hard. And so a lot of people think they need to be motivated to go do something, whereas I believe that discipline is a significantly more important aspect. And then how do you measure your discipline is through that accountability. Being unhealthy and overweight is hard, okay? Going to the gym and being healthier and in a healthy weight is hard. You get to choose which one it is. Having a job that you hate is hard. Learning a new skill that allows you to walk away from that job, find a different job, leave them altogether, however that looks, right? That's hard. You get to choose your hard.
Yeah.
It always comes down to that. And so if you err to the level of your highest accountability, and so if you're the best that you have to offer is the only thing you can be held accountable is to paying your bills, because you'll go to your mundane job and you're not going to do anything else to get past that. And that's the highest level of your accountability. And so when people are thinking, man, that part's hard, but I have to be more accountable to do something better, they're thinking, there's that gap. Does that make sense?
So what are the secrets? How do some of the most successful entrepreneurs find the freedom that we all got into business for in the first place? How did they find the time, energy, and resources to launch and scale strong? And how do entrepreneurs like us align our time, money, and energy in a way that will allow us to reach what we set out to achieve? These are the key questions, and this community will give you the answers. Welcome to the Prosperity Movement.
I figured today, for a topic, we could actually talk a little bit about what we were saying this morning. Talk about accountability and the effects thereof, and kind of, I guess, what people would be resistant to when it comes to accountability. Things like that. So, yeah. So we have some members here on Zoom too, so we can ask them as well. But the way I've always looked at accountability, it kind of has a negative reputation, doesn't it? You know, people think they're being held accountable. They look at it as a bad thing. You know, they look at it like, oh, I'm going to get punished if I mess up, if I make a mistake. But that's not what it's for, right? Accountability ultimately is just to, I guess it's a kind of a trick to course correct, because if there isn't accountability, you could make mistakes, but then not correct them. And then you just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. So accountability is actually a really good thing. The people that I find that are most uncomfortable with the concept tend to be the people that need to work on their integrity the most. And I know that's kind of a rough statement, but none of us are perfect. And I know for a fact, for the last couple of years, I've been working really hard on my own integrity, even little things. You know, if I tell my kids, you know, yeah, we'll get some ice cream later, I make sure that happens, you know, or if I make, even if it's not really a promise, but I like say, yeah, let's do a thing. I've been working really hard to make sure I don't come up with reasons not to do it, which is very easy to come up with the reasons not to do something and to back out of commitments and stuff like that. So like I'm too tired or whatever the case might be, but
yeah, sometimes I've made commitments to my son and time comes to honor it, you know, just
yeah,
crying a little bit like I'm so tired right now.
Exactly.
I don't want to play Legos.
Yeah.
But you got to. Yeah, I think you're hitting on something that it's not that a lack of integrity by itself is the only part that's that kind of rough statement. It's, I think, like you said, the accountability, the word, the concepts itself it's rough and it's hard. And so there's a couple of concepts that I think are really important to note is that accountability is really just a way to measure your discipline right? And
Mm.
discipline is basically doing the things you don't want to do to get the things that you do want. Right? Like discipline to go to the gym. That's a great one, right?
Wow.
And that's
Surprise, surprise.
right. Well, by nature, I think that we're designed to conserve energy, and you can see that through so many different avenues. But to be accountable, sometimes it's easier to do those things that are not as hard, and it's because we're like hardwired, I feel, to do that. And so a lot of people think they need to be motivated to go do something, whereas I believe that discipline is a significantly more important aspect, right? And then
Mm.
how do you measure your discipline is through that accountability, right? Are you actually following through? And so all these things they're rough languaging for a lot. I'm guilty of it as well, to be held accountable, especially when my wife is the one doing it. She's like, chancla, and
Yeah.
and it's uncomfortable because the things that are comfortable typically aren't actually producing what we want, right? If we think of it like just basic hunting, gathering, or farming and stuff, it's a lot easier to not want to go do it until you're really hungry, and then you're motivated to go.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'll take care of the field tomorrow. Like my garden, if you I don't know about you, but if you miss one day of not pulling weeds, oh my gosh, like it's horrendous, right? And
Yeah.
so I guess what I'm trying to say is that our default nature, I believe, for at least most of us, are is to err on the side of things that are easier and more comfortable. That's just who we are. Like who wants to be uncomfortable, right? There's
Right.
some weird people out there that love discomfort, but I'm not one of them. I don't know if you are, but
No.
I like to be comfortable. And so that accountability sounds ugly just because we're starting to tie it to the things that we've done in the past to be held accountable for what kind of discipline we want. And it's not fun. But here's the other concept: is you get to choose what's hard. Okay, being unhealthy and overweight is hard. Okay, going to the gym and being healthier and in a healthy weight is hard. You get to choose which one it is. Having a job that you hate is hard. Learning a new skill that allows you to walk away from that job, find a different job, leave them altogether, however that looks, right? That's hard. You get to choose your hard.
Yeah.
It always comes down to that. And so if you're accountable, you err to the level of your highest accountability, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're the best that you have to offer is the only thing you can be held accountable is to paying your bills, because you'll go to your mundane job and you're not going to do anything else to get past that. And that's the highest level of your accountability, right? And so when people are thinking, man, that part's hard, but I have to be more accountable to do something better, they're thinking,
Mhm.
there's that gap. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Am I speaking words in a coherent fashion, or is it not making sense outside of the head?
You're doing great. No, you're making a lot of sense. And actually it just brought some thoughts to mind with like the job. If you have a job, you're held accountable at your job, right? Um
You're
and try,
managed your job, right? That's what
yeah.
that's what gets most people hung up on the idea of accountability, is because they've been taught management and micromanagement versus an actual true accountability system. Like if you were to ever, when you call me out when I'm not necessarily being held accountable to stuff, right? And you're like, Travis, you need to do this. It's uncomfortable to hear it. But when done in a constructive way, I don't feel like you're trying to micromanage me. You're just like, Travis, I expect more from you, right?
Well, it's
And
it's uncomfortable to say it, Travis. So you should just do what you're supposed to do. I'm just kidding.
yeah.
No, you're fine.
Anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just
No, it's all good. Yeah, I think that I like that how there's like different almost different levels, and it's almost like each level that you're looking to attain, there's gonna be a higher level of accountability. It's
depends on your
it,
responsibilities. Yeah.
yeah,
I was
it's
just having this
inevitable.
conversation with Henry. Is that the older you get, the more freedoms you get. But with the more freedoms that you have, there's inherently more responsibilities, right? And so it's a lot easier to be a 4 year old and when things are basically all done for you. But as you grow and as you desire more of that freedom from and just in childhood is what I'm talking about, right? then you get more responsibilities, you get more chores, you get more things to take care of because you have less of me doing it for you, right?
Mm.
And that's the same thing when it goes out into the career fields or, oh, what is that? Something popped up.
Yeah.
All good. So
Career fields.
there's different, you were saying there's different levels of accountability, and it's just because there's different levels of responsibilities too. If you have one kid, there's less accountability than if you have two kids. You're only accountable for one. It's just basic math,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so if you have just a generic W-2 job with XYZ responsibilities, here's your level of accountability. You're not accountable for the different department over here. That's your level.
Versus, well, and then you can think of it like the next level to that. A lot of people, they go to self-employed from there, right? And that's a different
Right.
layer of accountability because now it's like if you don't do your thing, there's a much bigger consequence. A job, you might get a slap on the wrist, but if you're self-employed, it means you don't get paid, right? So it's a big, big shift there. And Brian's here, so I'll let him in here real quick.
Yeah, I
Um,
was just talking to the local franchise owner of New Balance. Don't tell him I'm wearing Reebok right now. But I was talking to him yesterday. I went to his house for dinner, and we were talking about just the livelihood of entrepreneurialism, right? And he was talking about this manager who was a little bit overwhelmed with his responsibilities, so he hired another manager, and they were both expecting to get a pay raise, but he's like, no, you've divided your responsibilities. Like, what do you mean with less responsibility and stuff? Like, why do you get paid more? It doesn't make any sense. And of course, the guy ended up leaving for a $2 pay raise somewhere else. And we were talking, the concept was like, he's not the one up at night wondering, am I paying him enough? Right. And the
yeah.
day that he was leaving was the day that Josh was going to go give him a pretty substantial pay raise, actually. And they're
Oh,
like,
shit.
man, timing can be so rough on it. But that accountability is a little higher with Josh's role, being accountable for all the members underneath him. But then
Mhm.
he's not accountable for corporate New Balance, right? There's different tiers and such all throughout.
Yeah.
Uh, but the idea that we're expressing here is that it's typically kind of there's a dissonance with the concept of being held accountable as if it's a bad thing. Like, I don't think that when you guys hold me accountable for things, you're doing it in a sense of, I'm dissatisfied with you and shame on you, blah blah blah. It's more on the
Right.
lines of rise to the occasion and do your best, and it's encouraging, right? I have to remind myself that specifically with Brian, because Brian does a really good job of holding me accountable, and
Me
sometimes
too.
it feels bad. And it's not just Brian; it's anybody. My wife telling me that I need to be accountable. It does feel bad, but then if you stop and think, why do you not want that? You don't want the responsibilities and the extra benefits that come with them, right? As a kid,
Yeah.
you have more freedoms, more responsibilities. There's more accountability. So
Yeah.
innately, what you're saying is, if you don't want the accountability, you don't want the responsibilities, and therefore the benefits and the perks that you get from that higher level of stuff, right?
Okay, well, first of
So,
all, thank you for your grace. I was just on another podcast before jumping on this one, and I also noticed, guys, that I don't know if you guys do this, but I've caught myself after seeing like Darren do some editing of me being on my phone during these calls. So I'm like letting you know right now that it is completely on silent and throwing it away. I'm fully here, 100% with you. From now on, because I was looking at it, I'm like, man, I'm a little embarrassed that I'm actually on that stupid thing while we're talking. It's ridiculous.
It's the
So
level of accountability you're trying to uphold,
let's
right?
say, yeah, we're gonna hold you accountable to that. You better believe it.
thank you. Appreciate it. Let's
So basically,
go.
Brian, before you got on, we were talking about how the concept of accountability, similar to the concept of discipline and such, there's a negative connotation to it that oftentimes we can experience or think of when it comes to holding ourselves or holding other people accountable. It's uncomfortable in a lot of ways. But what you were talking about was that you get to choose your hard, right? And just to recap, for like an example, is it's really hard to be, unhealthy and overweight, whatever, It's uncomfortable. A lot of bad things can happen, but it's also really hard and uncomfortable to go and get into better shape, right? And so the cool thing is we get to choose our hard and where we want to go with life. There's cause and effect. There's consequences of all of these things. And so innately accountability doesn't have, it's not just an innately bad thing. There seems to be some kind of dissonance and disagreements with our emotions behind it. So any kind of thoughts there and words of wisdom?
Surrounding choosing your heart. In terms of words of wisdom, I don't want to take a position ever as if I've got it all figured out. I think that there are some times where my tone might come out that way. But I just want to make clear that I don't have it all figured out. In regards to choosing your heart, I think there's a really amazing message that I got to catch, just a 30-second blip, or maybe even a minute, 60-second blip of Jordan Peterson talking about the importance of, how he speaks with males, especially in particular. And I don't think that this is bad across the board, whether you're male or female, but the idea of actually choosing to do something that is actually challenging, that is actually hard, it builds character. When we look at, and I was just on this last podcast, if anybody wants to go to I think it's Entrepreneurs Uncensored or something. That's the one that I just posted on Facebook. Yeah, Uncensored Entrepreneurs. So it's posted on Facebook. It's in our Facebook group. It's on my Facebook page. But we were talking about the reality of okay, so the Bible, and we're open about our faith here, talks about how in life we're guaranteed trials, right? A lot of people think that if I accept Jesus, my life is just going to get easier. No. Jesus is really important because it's the key to heaven. But we're going to be faced with trials, like it or not. And like you said, you get to choose your heart. Isn't it hard to be out of shape and unhealthy? And isn't it hard to get into shape and be healthy? Right? Those are really, really hard things. Now, Galatians 5:22-26 says the fruit of the Spirit is love, peace, patience, kindness, forbearance, and self-control. And against such things there is no law. So that self-control, that's another, we're now talking discipline again, right? Nothing like delayed gratification to really drive home, what is satisfaction like when it's instant, and what is satisfaction like when you've actually put in the time and the effort and the work, even into a relationship or a marriage. Maybe your marriage is incredibly ridiculously hard on a thread, but you decided to be disciplined. You decided to be delayed gratification. So you decided to put in the work, take time away from certain aspects that are hurting your relationship and honing in on the areas that you need to hone into to make it happen. Maybe it's a little bit of time and space away while you're honing in on proper communication, right? And I only bring this stuff up because I have a deep conviction surrounding the numbers. Because I was just talking about this on this last podcast. What is it? What is Prosperity Movement all about? Who are we? What is our main mission? What is our main focus? And if we break it into one sentence, it is to help families across the nations drive more impact and income so they can do more of the things they love with the people they love most. That's who we are and what we're all about. Now, Simon Sinek says start with why. So the question is why? What's our why behind that statement? So then now we get to the reality of the statistics. The statistics being 50% of marriages right now are ending in divorce. 75%, this is one I heard from Zach, 75% of entrepreneurs that aren't working together, those marriages are failing. Here's an interesting one. So there's a massive stigma around mental health and addiction. So 9 out of 10 with those that experience mental health and addiction, those marriages are dying. And then 50% of the Western world deal with that. And we're talking mental health, something as simple as for ladies, you get postpartum depression. Everybody experiences this stuff at some point in time in your life. It's going to happen. And how much confusion. John 10:10 says the thief came to seek, kill, and destroy, but I came to give you life and to give it to you abundantly. And so first 50%, how does the enemy, we all agree that there's good and evil in the world. Does everybody agree with that? There's
Yeah.
good and evil in the world. It's just the reality of it. Some people decide not to address the fact that there's a king of each one of those, a king of darkness and a king of the kingdom, the light, the life, the way. The reality is how that other dirty, rotten snake speaks and how he works is through confusion. How many people are walking around confused half the time in their life, no intentionality, and they're hurting in the areas of the 4 pillars of prosperity that we talk about, that the time, the health, the relationships, and the legacy. And they're having a hard time getting a sense of purpose and fulfillment, right?
Mhm.
Now, what would we say is the 2 main drivers for divorce? Or maybe there's more than 2, but what would you guys say the main drivers for divorce are?
Well, finances for sure.
Especially in what's going on right now, I'd say number 1 is communication.
For sure. Yeah.
Because a real genuine lady and a woman is not so much concerned about the money in the bank so much as she's concerned about the security and the safety, and security, right? I think that's a true lady. That's what a true lady is to me, because a true lady is going to stick with you through thick and thin. And that communication, that connection is what drives the safety and security. And the more safety and security we have, the more prosperity you have. And where does that term prosperity come from? Does anybody know what it means in the Greek? Evimeria. Prosperity, evimeria, actually means wellness, be well, right? Everybody thinks prosperity gospel, we're just trying to money, and like give to my church and you'll get millions of dollars, right? But hey, and you get a car, No, not that kind of prosperity. But this is what we should be honing in on in our lives, is that well-being, including well-being in your finances. That's incredibly important, because right now, again, the problem is that the inflation is like a wildfire in a prairie fire, a tornado fire, if you will. And yet we're dealing with this challenge where now teachers are raising our children. That's crazy to me. I was literally a teacher's aide a few years ago, actually in 2017, actually before you and I met in 2018, as a teacher's aide, one of the most stressful jobs. And I think we have a teacher here on Yolanda. Your mom is on the call here, Zach. She's a teacher, unsung hero. Oh, praise you. Thank you for what you're doing. But the responsibility of raising children is somehow falling on teachers, and it's not their responsibility, because mom and dad are out there slugging it out at a 9 to 5 and barely able to keep the lights on. Every family is like basically $200 to $400 away from everything falling apart.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah,
right.
And I think if we're to, that's 100% accurate. If we were to bring all that back to accountability and choosing your hard, like life right now for the average Joe and Jane is pretty tough. To get out of that situation in that kind of scenario, it's going to be hard, right? It is not a walk in the park. Okay. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Right. At least it is for me. And that's a question you ought to ask yourselves, right? Like, what is this new hard worth it? If it takes me some time, energy, effort, maybe even investment, is that worth it in order to get out of my current situation?
Right. Well, your why when you have family and other people needs to become obviously clear. And I think that every man and woman wants their why to be their legacy in providing for their family. But I was also talking about this on the Uncensored Entrepreneurs podcast there about Simon Sinek, talking about choosing, start with why. And I think that we a lot of the times we got to be careful with that, because your why can be a jaded why.
Mhm.
Your why can be, I want the Lamborghini and I want this and I want that and I want more money because of this, because of that. And
Or
it,
I want to prove that person wrong.
it could be,
Those
yeah,
kinds of
I mean,
things.
that's rooted in the spirit of pride, right? And so like totally. And so like I believe, and not just believe, I'll go ahead and say no, because there's a layer between believing and knowing. Like you can believe in Jesus Christ, you can know in Jesus Christ. And like the disciples died like some of the most horrific deaths and joy because they knew, you can see it in John the Baptist even, gets his head cut off historically and he laughs historically and hysterically before he gets his head cut off. And people say, oh, he was crazy. John, obviously he was crazy. But why would a person do that? Like, do you know where he was going next? He knew where he was going next, right? That's what I see. That's that's what I and again, difference between believing and knowing. Do you believe in Jesus? Do you know in Jesus? Do you know? Do you know him? Do you know what he created you for? And so like starting with who is so important, and who based on whose perspective. Do you want your eyes and your ears and your thoughts and your feelings, which a lot of the times, more times than not, are so off point? How many people walk around believing that they're not good enough and all that kind of stuff? And that's not what God says about you. Right? I want God's eyes. I want His ears. I want His words to work in and through me. And so, coming back to your main point again, choosing that's a choice, and that's a hard choice to choose when you're going through the fire. And again, you're going to get trials in life. That's a hard choice to choose. And in the midst of those, the like going through the fire in life and the problems and the challenges, like how many people actually ask, why is this happening to me? And how much of like a victim question is that, when the proper question is like, what am I learning from this? What am I supposed to learn from this? Because this too shall pass. What have I learned up to this point, and how do I move forward? What can I learn next? What should I be focused on next? What should I be focused on now to really hone in? And Clemmer
I
has
think
been
all of
something.
that is really good to tie into the accountability message here, which
Yeah.
is that typically, at least from what I've seen, and I think you guys have seen as well, is that a lack of accountability oftentimes is attributed to a lack of clarity on what it is that it
Intentionality.
should be, and yeah, intentionality and such. And so, what's one of the things that we like to do with our folks is to sit down and do very clear plans and outlines,
Mm,
and put together an actual holistic view, not only of, well, what do I need to do to learn how to trade, but also what do you need to do to learn how to be more patient just as you are.
mm.
And
Yeah.
so the
So that you can
accountability, I
successfully trade, right?
Yeah.
Like those are such important pieces of the equation. Keep going there, Travis.
yeah, it's a matter of intentionality, and and if you're intentionally going to increase your responsibilities or your accountability and such, then typically good things happen from there, right? But people want it to be easy. That's the biggest hang up, is they want it to be easy. And I don't think that easy things in life necessarily produce the fruit that people want. And
Yeah.
so we can tie it down again to, it's easy to sit on the couch and watch Netflix. Quite enjoyable, actually. I really like that. Um, and but with that, what do you hope to gain? And so when we're dissatisfied with where we are, we have a clear picture of where we want to go to, then we can actually see, what do we have to be held accountable towards. So it's a matter of clarity, right? You were saying something about
Yeah.
Clemmer.
Yeah, I was saying something about Clemmer, and just because it ties into the intentionality. Like I've been diving deeper into, and we're really opening up about. I would consider myself a Clemmerite now, and I'm waiting for everybody else to jump on the same boat here. But like, that really opened my mind to understand. Like, so there's lots of things too that people don't even understand that's holding them back based on decisions they're making, and more times than not, there's this resistance in your life. Like, and you can be the most like, whether you're Christian or religious, or you have a faith, or all that kind of stuff, you can still be walking around in a conflicted, resistant mode to, like, you can have resistance or resentment. Um, and not even realize that that's within you, and that's causing so much of the chasms that you're dealing with in your life, or the fact that you're hitting a wall and you're not getting the results that you're wanting to achieve because you've conditioned yourself for that. And I think even Ed Milet talks about the thermometer and how important it is to surround yourself with people that are at a higher, whether you say frequency or a higher heat on the thermometer, right? Like, because what ends up happening is if you sit in a pool that's this temperature, and what you're wanting to achieve is sitting at this temperature or this frequency, you need to be surrounded by those that are already doing it and have that energy and have that you know what I mean, to rise up to it. And it's so easy. He also talks about, like, you ever notice how, like, you start getting somewhere, and then you self-sabotage, like something as silly as, like, man, I got a $400 traffic ticket. I was just getting there, and I get that stupid traffic ticket, right? Like,
It sounds like that happened to you recently, bud.
no, it didn't. It didn't happen to me. No, it actually didn't. No, I've been pretty darn good. I'm on a roll.
It happened to me a lot.
Don't speak that into my life. Cast that out. No, but like, how many people you're getting there, and then you finally get to that place of comfort, and then you just completely, like, pull yourself right back down to that same level, and so again, with why I was bringing up Clemmer, is Clemmer really helped me on a deeper level with intentionality. And we talk about a book called Living Forward by Michael Hyatt and Daniel Harkavy. But, like, how intentional can you be with your time, your health, your relationships, and your legacy? Like, I really want to challenge everybody on this call and anybody who's watching this. Ask yourself, how intentional can I be? And really ponder on that for a second, because now the next question is, how intentional do you want to be? Do you want to keep living in chaos? Like, I mean, you might still end up living in chaos even if you're intentional, but at least if you're intentional, you know exactly what you're shooting at.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, it's just like you're throwing paint at the wall, hoping it's going to,
That's one of the things that kind of sparked me to make big changes years ago, was the concept of where I'm heading right now with my intentionality is almost assuredly one that I probably wouldn't be able to ever really truly retire. And if that's the goal that most people have, and certainly one that I did at one point in time, at least, I was like, I'm on a way that it's not going to end the way that I want right now. So I've got to do something different. And the worst case scenario is I try my whole life to make that happen and it doesn't work, and I end up in the same place that I was going anyways. And that's another thing that I have people, when I'm speaking to potential new members, is this fear of failure, right? And they want this guaranteed approach, or they want to know what the other students have done and how good they've been and such, right? Or what's the worst case scenarios. They want to know about everybody else and stuff, except for we need to take a look inside. But a thought process here, and it's not just with prosperity movement, but with anything that you set out to do. If you go and do it and that fear of failure manifests where you don't get exactly what you wanted out of it, worst case scenario is you're still right where your current reality is, right? And so there's this weird sense of fear of failure that I think that most of us naturally have. We don't want to try things without being able to benefit with them, right? I wouldn't want to try new foods that I didn't think I might possibly like, right? Like, so trying new things and doing and investing in yourself with time, money, energy, the whole 9 yards, right? It can be a really daunting task because there's that constant fear of, like, what if, right? And I challenge people to think, well, what if worst case scenario? What if you don't get exactly what you wanted out of it? You're still right where you are. And that's not failure. That's having tried something. I think Thomas Edison is the one that quoted this. He's like, I haven't failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that doesn't work. That don't work, right? And that's the idea of is constant progression and intentionality over time produces the fruit. There has to be investment. The trees don't just sit there and magically have fruit. It's an investment of nutrients and such. That's why there's pruning involved as well, so
Yeah.
that you can redivert those energies towards the fruits or towards
Come
whatever
on.
you're trying to do with that plant, right? And that's what we have to do as people as well. And don't cut body parts off. Don't do that. Don't prune yourself like that. But there's pruning of the heart and the spirit and stuff, where you have to go and see things for what they are. I one thing I really don't like is the concept of work-life balance.
Mm.
I think it
Same.
was Jeff Bezos that said this, that it's not work-life balance, it's work-life harmony. Like, you want to harmonize the parts and bring them into a place where it's machine working together, because balance itself implies a sacrifice of some
Right.
place, right? Now, yeah, you do have to sacrifice some things. You have to sacrifice the Netflix, right? When I got started years ago, literally, I canceled all my subscriptions. I even canceled some of my cards and got new ones just in case there were subscriptions I forgot about. And anything that I needed to do later on, I can resubscribe, whatever, right? But get really intentional and sacrifice the things that aren't feeding what your goals are and such. Obviously, reward yourself and give yourself some grace and some things that are comforting and stuff along the way. But to see radical change in your life requires radical change.
Mm.
So it's just the concept of harmonizing the pieces of your life that you've intentionally planned around is a lot better than sitting there and sacrificing on a work-life balance, that I have to sacrifice time with my family in order to make this all work. It's like, well, no, maybe you can sacrifice a half hour of sleep, and the hour and a half you would otherwise spend with Netflix, you now have 2 hours a day with that concept to go through. And it's not sacrificing your life with your family, it's the other part where you're building.
And then
to build anything requires a period of construction.
Yeah, and like the creativity, being like open to the flow of your creativity, right? Like, and I witness this with you a lot, and this has been a big part of my career, and I'm sure same as Zach's. But like, there are seasons where you're gonna be a lot more output and a lot more, like it's the concept of reaping and sowing too. So like, once you get out of the quote proverbial 9 to 5, quote unquote 9 to 5 grind, you start moving into entrepreneurialism. There's a science to it, but there's also an art, and with art comes creativity, and with art comes inspiration. And so there are some times where, like, even Elon Musk, he'll literally, let his team or his family know, okay, I'm gonna be gone for the next however long. Could be 3 weeks, could be 3 months of like, I'm gonna sleep on the floor in the office, or on the cot in the office, or whatever, right? Because like, I'm high output during this. And then next season it's like, okay, you're now taking in the fruit, and you're enjoying the fruit of the labor, and you're allowing systems and processes to go and work and flow and that kind of thing. Trading allows you to get a lot done in a short amount of time too. Like when we look at James, he's trading how many days a week?
3.
3 days a week. He's honing it in. What's he doing with the rest of his time? He doesn't have to be doing half the stuff he's doing, but he's prepping things for the community and all that kind of stuff. And then he's getting creative and artsy with his ideas that he brings to us, and that he wants to work with us. So like, the big question again with Prosperity Movement, what are we all about? We want to help you drive more impact and income so you can do more of the things you love with the people you love most. But let's be real. Like, are you going to spend 24 hours a day with your family at the same time? I mean, if you're homeschooling and that's what you're focused on, and that's the thing, like that's what I'm, delving more into. I know, Zach, you do quite a bit of that yourself. You got 6 kids that you're homeschooling. That's great. You have that ability. But Zach also homeschools, and he also does what we're doing creatively with the Prosperity Movement. You've got something in your heart. You've got something to give to the world, something unique and special. What are you going to do if now you're replacing your income with the 2 hours or whatever trading 3 to 4 days a week? What are you doing with the rest of your time? What are you doing with the rest of your life? Because I don't know about anybody else, that 1 to 2 hours for me, like, I just sit here and think, like, the more that the investment companies that we're developing and growing right now grow, It's what more can I do for the community? And as I'm doing that, I'm leading my family. What does that mean? I was just saying this to my wife the other day. I'm working towards marketplace ministry and flat out ministry, and I'm doing everything that I can to give the kids a head start and for them to witness us doing it, right? Living it, being it, doing it. And I want them to be able to dive into that, but I also want to instill them with the creativity and the resourcefulness that if it was ever taken away, that they'd be able to handle that and go ahead and do, right?
Yeah. That's like
Because
that show, The Undercover Billionaire, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And the concept, just high level, is that somebody who has had wild success financially and business wise is basically stripped of all of his or her resources, contacts, money, everything, and all they have left is their knowledge of what they've learned. And so their goal, they start, I believe, with $100,
$100. Yeah.
and they get a car as well,
Yeah.
transportation. Um, and they have to go build $1 million company within 3 months, right?
throw
And
$100 in a car.
starting with that. So the concept here is you can take away so much, but the resourcefulness and creativity that somebody can have from a knowledge base and some skill sets they develop can be redone. Like, if you think that if you took everything away from Elon Musk, you think that guy's gonna cower in a corner and cry? Or you think he's like,
How many times has Donald Trump gone bankrupt and then bounced
Many. A
Right?
lot of times.
right back into multi-millions, right? Like, so, like, once you
And
do
I
something
can
once,
I can only imagine, like,
bankruptcy, just FYI, doesn't mean you lose everything.
right.
It's a horrible restarting point, but it's not an end all, right? And I don't know if did Donald Trump go bankrupt or some companies that he built.
probably some companies, and he probably had holding companies and everything like that too. So,
It was probably strategic,
right,
you know,
yeah.
or a learning points.
And
I don't want to dog on people who've gone bankrupt, acting like that's a horrible thing, whether it's
Yeah.
Trump or anybody.
Yeah.
If it might be, I almost went bankrupt many years ago.
I did,
made
almost in
terrible,
2016.
terrible by financial decisions. Didn't know any better, and it's not that I was like on that bleeding edge of it, but I was like, I can't see a way out of this. Maybe it's just easier if I file for bankruptcy. But that was
Yeah.
when I got my head out of my butt and started doing some things, and that's when I did the Living Forward book. Guys, we can't overstate that enough. Living Forward, at least conceptually, is an amazing read,
So good.
and it helped me and Brian in particular very, very highly. But anyway, sorry, I wanted to.
No, so good. So good. So good.
Well, so those billionaires and stuff, like, obviously we're not billionaires. And I don't know if I'd be able to build $1 million company in 3 months with $100 in a car. However, should something horrible happen and somehow things go down, whatever, the internet dies or something, like, I have absolutely no doubt that I'd be right back on my feet. Maybe not $1 million in 3 months, but I guarantee you my family would be taken care of. Right?
You know what? We're just gonna have to practice, Zach. So you can get there. We'll get you there. Let's get you there. Let me coach you there. Because
I have a list, an
I'm gonna
ongoing list right now of it's my I call it my business solutions, but I have a list of over 180 different business opportunities and ideas that I've come up with that require like zero capital up front. And just, I mean, how big they get individually, of course, there's lots of variables, but like you said, if the internet goes down, guess what? I know I already have a list of what I can start doing and go out back to the how do you say it?
Drawing
Back
board.
to the grind and do things from the bottom up and start building those foundations. But we've already established anything that needs to be built requires a period of construction. So
discipline, consistency, delayed gratification,
Accountability.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that said, in the prosperity movement, we're discussing more effective ways to hold our members accountable, to follow their trading plans and to follow the processes. And I'm excited for that. And then for those of you that are members and listening in, you should be excited for that too, because sometimes what we need is we just need a swift kick in the rear end, and then we're back on the straight and narrow, and we're gonna start getting the results, you know. So, and that's just for a few folks that continue to not have discipline, and they know who they are, and we're here to help, and that's what we're gonna do.
Who you are? Get out of here! I mean, come over here and snap out of it.
For those of you that are not members of our movement and want to be a part of what it is that our community is working towards and building, go to our website, prosperitymovement.online. I'm gonna type it in here real quick. Prosperitymovement.online. Go in there and start going through some of the content. There is a chat bubble in the bottom right corner. You can feel free to activate that. That will initiate a conversation with our AI bot, just so you know. And the bot will help you to book a time with our team. And with that booking, we'll give you some free content as well, such as our blueprint. We have another course called Trading Industry Exposed. You get a whole little list of resources for you once you talk to a team member. So just go to our website, check us out. We'd be more than happy to share with you all the information you're looking for, and go from there. Anything else, gents?
No, I think that's outstanding. That was a good session.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week. Adios.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.